decision making should be as magical as ChatGPT is for doing my web research. That's our goal. Everybody in the enterprise should be able to use WisdomAI for real-time decision making. Making people excited about your product is different from making people pay for your product. With machine learning, everybody has to become a quality engineer. This is like a big mindset shift between the traditional way and the new way. To build a product, there is a lot of work that needs to happen that folks don't quite realize. Anytime somebody says we have decided to build, I am thrilled about it because they will fail in 6 months and then they'll become a customer of ours.
Welcome to Escape Velocity, a podcast to unpack the 0 to 1 journey of founders who have built successful, scaled businesses today that we all admire. Going from formation stage to product market fit is often the most messy and least linear part of the startup journey. In this series, we dive into the early parts of the founder journey and understand the lessons of successful founders who have gone from an idea to finding product market fit and beyond. Welcome to Escape Velocity. This week, we sat down with CEO of WisdomAI, Soham Mazumdar. Soham was also the co-founder of Rubrik, a multi-billion-dollar public company. I hope you enjoy our conversation. All right, Soham, great to have you on the show.
Thank you.
I want to jump right into it. So tell us a little bit about your upbringing, your background. What got you into technology and entrepreneurship in the first place?
Gosh, entrepreneurship, that took a long time. I was a math guy through and through. I grew up in a middle-class family in a small town in India. Small towns in India also have 1 million people, so it's not really that small. But my mom was a math professor, so doing math was really the thing to do, and I was good at it. And when you start doing math, people tell you that please don't become a mathematician, think about engineering school. So that got me into the IITs. From there I came for my grad school, started doing research. My research was all fairly theoretical, but 2 years in, I realized that, okay, this is not my cup of tea. I wanted to build something that folks would use. Left grad school, got into Google. That's how the journey began.
Amazing. And you joined Google and actually rose very quickly during a very short time period, working primarily on search infrastructure. And it's interesting, there's a lot of folks like Arvind Jain from Glean and Rubrik also who started in search. What is it about search you think that gets people, especially situated in this AI moment?
I think, I started in Google in 2004. I literally joined the week of the IPO, interestingly. So search was really I would say, the hard problem of the era to be working on, right? So first of all, you're thinking about, you are working with large volumes of data. You need to find information, rank the pages, identify what's the top result to show for a query. So there's this hard problems of this problems of quality. What's the right document? How do you rank them? Almost immediately, it suggests that you should be using AI in a certain way. At the same time, the time I was in Google, I would say AI itself was in its infancy. In fact, search quality back in the days, a lot of the ranking work was in fact not done by AI. And I kind of saw the journey of Google itself transforming itself, sort of inventing a lot of the AI that we see all around us. But again, to your original question, there are a lot of hard problems. So it had incredible talent. I got a chance to work with some amazing people. I, in fact, ran into Arvind Jain the first day in Google. Wow. At lunch, when I think he was just wandering about, just said hello. We were in completely different teams, but anyway.
And who knew you'd start a company later on together? And so you started your first company. WisdomAI is your third company now. Yes. You started your first company, Tagtile, right after Google. What got you the first spark to say, hey, I'm going to leave this at then rocket ship still to go?
Look, Google ultimately was a pretty big place. I was there for about 6 years. That's a long tenure. Yeah. And I worked on some pretty interesting problems. Got a chance to work on Terra Google. That was essentially complete re-architecture of the web serving system. I got a chance to work on some things around, which are actually more resonance now. Worked on a problem called Thing Search, which is about, instead of getting a list of links, blue links, can you give the answers directly? Sort of what is happening right now with ChatGPT, Perplexity, and so on. But that was like way early. So got a chance to work on really exciting problems. On the other hand, organizationally, it's a massive organization, and I could kind of feel that the impact that I wanted to have, I was not really having. So that was the motivation for leaving Google. And if you breathe the air of Silicon Valley, startups are there, right? So it's not that big a leap, to be very honest. And I got together with my co-founder, Abhik, and we were both in a similar moment in our own journeys.
Was he at Google also? Or?
He was actually not at Google. I knew him socially. He was finishing business school, and we just decided to start Tagtile together.
And tell us a little bit about that idea, and obviously you ended up getting acquired by Facebook later. Tell us a little bit about that journey.
There was a little bit of a pivot, but the eventual idea of Tagtile was, so this is 2010, right? So contactless payments, which is kind of like ubiquitous right now because your phones have this like special NFC chip, that was simply not a thing. So we thought, well, why don't we use the microphone and the speaker and turn it into a little modem through which we could interact with point of sale systems in stores. And that's how kind of exchange information between the two. And we could build loyalty, we could build payments and so on. Extremely cute idea. I found myself in one day building, doing circuit design, writing iOS code, doing some assembly debugging, and doing some hardware design as well, all at once. Very exciting. Learned that does not mean that it makes a business, but had a lot of fun doing it. And ultimately realized that while it's a very cute idea, I did not have the means and ability to scale it to be a good business. So ultimately, we got like a soft landing. Facebook was thinking about monetization strategies back then, and we ended up at Facebook.
Oh, amazing. And first-time entrepreneur, first experience in entrepreneurship. What's the biggest lesson back then you took away from that?
I would say, there are two. When you're at Google, customers just come to you, right? So you don't need to think about it. In fact, anybody who's come out of Google can easily claim that my product has been used by 500 million people, or it has generated $1 billion in revenue. Well, it just means that the setup was there for you and it just worked. So this whole business thing around acquiring customers or making sure there is product market fit, it was an alien concept to me. Right, and that was one learning. And the second thing is, what I would describe as founder market fit. The same, for a person of a certain background, there are certain ideas that are far more, things that they can execute really well on. In the case of trying to build something for local businesses, you really need to think about, can you distribute via some sort of local channel? That is something that none of us really ever thought about. So it was a very, picked an area which you didn't really understand. But anyway, amazing learnings, and that in many ways paved the way for my future career. So I am deeply thankful to that.
We're going to unpack some of those, I think, as it comes to WisdomAI. But so you're back at Facebook now. You got acquired. You very quickly actually jumped right back into entrepreneurship. Joined this team focused on building this new company called Rubrik. Tell us about it. Why jump right back into it? And then maybe tied back to what you just mentioned about founder market fit. How did you know this time this might be different?
Well, when I joined Facebook, it was, I had not scratched my itch any which way. It was simply that it felt like a nice parking spot for a little bit. So the journey felt incomplete, and I really wanted to go out. In terms of the next innings of my life, so I'd met Bipul during Tagtile. I tried to raise money from him, unsuccessfully, as I like to say it. And I think I'd kept in touch, and I kind of realized that, the sharp guy, understands business. And then this whole business about Rubrik was about data protection, right? And then one of my first questions was, okay, why should I care about it? And then I discussed with Vipul, discussed with Arvind Jain, and we kind of realized that a lot of the technologies that I had kind of almost taken for granted at Google about how to wrangle lots and lots of data, that was sort of alien to the enterprise, right? And I kind of knew the power of that kind of technology. So I think from a technology perspective, it was about bringing in these concepts of hyperscalers and can you make it work at enterprise scale. But on the business side, this is a business I did not understand. It was mostly about, a lot of it was bet on Vipul as well, saying that, okay, this is a smart person, I can work with him.
So I want to ask you one or two questions just about Rubrik before we jump into WisdomAI. At Rubrik, we talked a little bit about Tagtile and the learnings from there. What is the one or two main learnings you had from your time at Rubrik?
I mean, I would say Rubrik, first of all, again, building a high quality team. That is probably like the most clear learning I would have is Rubrik hired incredible talent at all positions, all the way from engineering to go to market. I have built amazing relationships with the initial hires in marketing and sales. They are as good as they get. And we went to great extent to kind of hire this talent. I have a story about, for engineering, there was a person who was about to have a kid, and we threw a baby shower for him and got lots and lots of flowers for his wife to convince them that, this is the place to be. I remember like Vipul for the first sales hire, I think he interviewed 45 people. Only then he kind of like settled on the person who ended up joining. So I think the hiring bar was incredibly high across the board. And that was like, I would say, one key factor why we were able to execute really well. I mean, there are other learnings, like for me, I had been more of an individual contributor up until that point. I would say Rubrik ended up growing to a really large scale. So I think a lot of like, how do you run a team? Those are like great learnings that I had. The other thing I would say, Rubrik is a company which never had tailwinds for the first 4 or 5 years of its life. It's like going after backup. Who knew what it was? But then it was able to catch a few moments really, really well. I would say when ransomware made its appearance around like 2017, 2018, Rubrik was the first company to realize how important a moment it was. And we turned our entire positioning, on the marketing side, but also on the engineering side to focus on seizing this opportunity. So I would say that's another thing, like I think, in a business, every 4 to 5 years, you have to reinvent yourself. And these moments come, but they will come, but you have to watch for it. And if you miss it, that makes the difference between something that is great versus just something mediocre. So again, lots of great learnings.
That's amazing. And the other thing that's interesting about Rubrik is that it's now spawned a ton of entrepreneurs. And we had Vipul on the podcast earlier, and he mentioned a little bit about the culture. But what do you think it is about either the time at Rubrik culturally or the experience of having to go through these different reinventions that has created now a growing list of entrepreneurs starting their own companies?
Yeah. So, I mean, I think, first of all, again, the talent bar was high. So, look, I mean, we hired really well. And I'm really, really proud of all my colleagues who have gone on to do great things. But I can speak on the engineering side. We really, pride ourselves on some bottoms-up innovation. A lot of the ideas about a lot of the small pivots that the company made were not entirely top-down. They were, we do a hackathon, some idea comes about, that kind of makes us think that, hey, that's the direction we should be going. A whole bunch of really important ones, including the big pivot around security, happened because we, folks did a prototype. We all kind of went behind it. So there was a culture of innovation always there. There was a culture of like, take risk, and we would kind of like back the people who would take risks. So I think that is the main reason why all of this has happened. And I think from a place that you learn how to be a good entrepreneur, I mean, Google was terrible at teaching you to be a great entrepreneur. Rubrik is fantastic in teaching you how to be a great entrepreneur, how to think about the business, how to think about all aspects of it, how do you work with customers. I mean, it's just an incredible learning experience.
Wow, amazing. And we met actually through Bipul. Bipul told me that his co-founder is leaving and I'm starting this new firm. You should talk to him, and lucky to be able to partner with you guys right at the beginning of Wisdom. Tell me about that moment. Why was it that, pre-IPO, clear path at Rubrik right now to go public, you decided this is the time for me to start a new company? What was the itch? What was the insight that got you to a point of saying, I'm going to leave this?
I mean, in this case, it's a confluence of events. Again, I would say the journey I had, even pre-Google, throughout Google, rather pre-Rubrik, throughout Google, it was about information discovery. And so this basic problem of how do you get people insights from data was always in my head. In Rubrik, I had, for a brief moment, tried to be a data analyst to see how to make engineering go better. I gave up very quickly, and we ended up hiring somebody. Just realized that it's a very, very hard problem to solve, right? I mean, in some ways, business folks, business executives want to get insights from data, but the ability to do so is, it's very hard. Data is complex. And the third one was timing, which was, there was LLMs were in the air, had seen what, GPT-3, 3.5 could do. So for the first time, I actually felt that, okay, all the problems that I have worked on or I have kind of faced, or something that I can personally relate to, this is the moment to actually think about finding a new way to solve it. So that was ultimately the main motivation for jumping at that moment, even though, again, as you mentioned, it was close to the IPO, so one path would obviously be, stay till the point where there is there's a milestone event. But I felt the moment was just here and just had to jump.
And you touched upon it a little bit just now, but third time entrepreneur at that point, what gave you the conviction of knowing that this was the space and area to jump in? You touched on some of the tailwinds you were seeing, but at a personal level, where did you know that, okay, now I know this is an opportunity that I can go pursue?
I think, first of all, again, like knowing that it's a big problem, and that was I kind of knew it. I had seen the level of investment that Rubrik itself had made to become a data-oriented company, data-driven company. Knew how hard it was. So I had that conviction that like this is a ubiquitous problem. I think in terms of like the technology being at a point where you could genuinely make an attack at it, I had a lot of conviction, just like seeing the early signs of what was happening with GPT 3.5 and so on. And lastly, this is a problem that's actually very close to my heart. I have, my first few projects at Google 20 years back were about some variants of this problem. So, so it's just like a trifecta. I just believe that this is the thing to do.
Yeah, well, amazing. And before we start jumping too much into Wisdom, I want to talk a little bit about team building. So you mentioned obviously one of the big learnings from Rubrik being the high bar for talent and building teams and excellent teams. You've built an incredible co-founder team and early founding team. Tell us a little bit about what you are looking for and have looked for in these early teammates.
Yeah, so I mean, I was very lucky in terms of my teammates at Rubrik, and I wanted to make sure that I have a very similar, set of folks all coming together to build the ship. So my co-founders, Kapil, Sharva, Guilherme, incredible guys, folks that I've actually worked with at Rubrik for 5-6 years. I just knew the kind of talent that I was going to be, that was needed to go after the space. And these folks, I actually knew that I had the team with which we could execute. So that's where it started. And from then onwards, again, like we've kept a similar hiring bar. I mean, if you kind of look at the folks that we have on the team, we have like a, IIT and exam in India that few million people give, the top ranker there. Super high caliber people across the board. I mean, that's I think, sets you up for success. And then, again, good people want to work with other good people. So we've been able to do that well.
Incredible. And tell us about V1 of Wisdom. I want to get into the 0 to 1 building of the new company. Where did you guys start? What was the initial idea around the product at that point?
Yeah, I mean, the basic insight, and we have held on to it even now, is there are folks who make decisions on a day-to-day basis. Could be execs, it could be folks in operational roles. They need to make decisions with data. However, they do not have the ability to wrangle data. Right? Data wrangling is left to analysts, data scientists. So how do you give the data wrangling superpowers to business users? That was the core problem statement that we went with. That's what we have been trying to solve for. The problem, again, like I think the exact shape of the product has certainly changed. What kind of data that we work with, what is the user experience of that we are providing to the end user? I think that has evolved quite a bit, but the core problem thesis has remained the same.
How do you think about this problem, which is a problem anybody who's building, I think, deep technical expertise within the realm of AI, of getting customers to trust you with their data, right? To get to this end state, you have to have them expose their data to you.
Great point. So there are two aspects to what we do. The number one question that people ask us is, can I trust you, right? I mean, ultimately, we have like CEOs who use our product. And most critical question for them is that, hey, you're giving me something, is this something that is believable? Yeah. And this is not like summarizing your email. This is like, hey, how to make more money, how to make my campaign go better. So the level of trust and accuracy that we need is critical. So again, so we've kind of like taken an approach that, we need to be able to prove the work that the system is doing. We need the ability for the system to be trained on your specific data. We need to, in fact, hit a benchmark. If you think 95% is human level accuracy, we need to be able to get to that point. So this is one class of work. In fact, this is probably, I would say, problem number 1, 2, and 3 that we solve. And this is what any new prospect always asks us: can we trust you? The second aspect to it is data security. Which is, we are not talking about public data. We are inevitably talking about your most sensitive business data. So again, luckily, having worked at Rubrik, this is not an alien concept to me. It's very, very similar. So you have to build a system knowing that it needs to have all the guardrails required to make sure the data remains safe. Whole bunch of like different, I would say, deployment form factors are necessary to be able to work with extra large customers. Access controls, who gets to see what, becomes like a very, very key part. So I mean, these are like, non-negotiables when you're building a product of this sort. And we have experience building it, so I think we've done a pretty solid job.
Yeah, perfect founder market fit in that sense. Yes. The one piece I'm curious, you've spent a lot of time obviously at Rubrik thinking more about the infrastructure side. WisdomAI is both infrastructure but also application. What was the new muscle, or what were the things that you had to relearn on the application side to be successful?
So actually, I have a friend. His name is Tal Shaked. He was a distinguished engineer at Google. He was also my desk mate in Google, wrong back, an investor. He said this, with machine learning, everybody has to become a quality engineer. I was like, what do you mean by quality engineer? His point was, look, you're working with probabilistic systems. So, this is not about you ask it to do these 5 things and it does these 5 things. What a quality engineer has to do is to essentially always think about how to evaluate the output of whatever is being done. So if you take that mindset, so then you don't just say, hey, I wrote this thing, it worked in this one example, I am good to go. You always say, all right, how will I evaluate this? Let me create like a evaluation framework for it. Let me make sure I generate sufficient number of examples so that I can in fact attest that in a statistical manner, a significant manner, the system is doing what it has been asked to do. So this is like a big mindset shift between the traditional way of engineering and the new way of engineering. Good news is, again, Sharva, my co-founder, who was the founding engineer at Glean, very much schooled in this system of thought. I mentioned my Google career. Yeah. It actually started with search ranking and not infrastructure. So for 3 years, I was basically looking at the relevance of results, which is, again, all about quality. So in some ways, we have enough background within our company to think in these terms. So again, it's a new way of, for sure, it's a new way of doing it. But I think at this point, we have a lot of expertise about how to tackle it.
Yeah, it's interesting. You ask Google, what's the best coffee shop in San Francisco? It'll give you its best guess and 9 other answers. Yeah. But when you ask Wisdom, what was the revenue of last quarter, you have to get that number right. It's
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Yeah, incredible. So wanted to talk to you a little bit about the building phase. So when you got started, for the last year plus so far, you've been pretty quiet about what you've been building. A lot of companies, including Rubrik, including Glean, the ones we mentioned, have had a similar path. What is it about building in quiet when you got started that's important to you and strategic to you as you thought about getting this company off the ground?
I think there is a question of, I like to say that you have to think about problems from a first principle. How much time should it take to build a high quality system that can, in a somewhat provable manner, let the CEO get the answers that they need? Yeah. Or in the case of Rubrik, it was, you have your entire infrastructure, can you reliably protect it? Or in the case of Glean, here are these like 10 enterprise apps, can you reliably search through it? So the moment the problem statement is like the ones I described, there is a, let's say, engineering laws of physics that it is going to take a certain amount of time. So, you have to kind of, in that case, first of all, have enough conviction that this is a worthy problem statement to build. You spend, let's say, the year that it takes to get the product out into the market, which is a different frame of mind from, if you're building a consumer app. I mean, that is something where you probably should be doing mock-up testing even before you start building a single line of code, right? So it just works differently, and you just have to respect what makes sense for the specific business you're going after.
Yeah. And similarly tied to that, you raised a significant amount of seed funding as well, and not too dissimilar from what you did at Rubrik. Tell us just a little bit about your philosophy around early fundraising. Why think about it in that context of a bigger round early on versus maybe a consumer company that does milestone-based rounds? Just how do you what's your philosophy around early seed funding?
I wish I had a better philosophy on this. I think I knew that I needed investment to be able to build a team that would be able to execute on the vision that we had. So in some ways, I think, if I just raised, let's say, $1 million, may not have been able to get to the point that we are. So that is one, right? I knew that I needed some significant runway to be able to get to a point where we can put it out there. I would say that, ultimately it's, a lot of entrepreneurs don't have a choice. When I was building Tagtile, it was actually very hard to raise money, right? So in some ways, it's not just what you want. There's a lot of it comes down to circumstances. I think for Tagtile, we were able to raise $300,000 and just had to work with that, right? Yeah. So in some ways, like I'm giving you this answer that I needed the money, but it was also because we were able to raise it. That it's a little bit disingenuous for me to say that I had a philosophy on this.
Yeah. No, that's helpful. It's interesting. And, so back to Wisdom and the platform you guys have built, there's also a design choice you made, which is to think about the product more horizontally, right? It's the CEO has a problem, but so does the business line manager, and so does the data scientist within the organization. How did you think about wanting to go more broad and horizontal versus often instinct is let's go deep on a vertical or functional area, et cetera?
It's a good question. I think, again, like it comes down to, first of all, again, is it possible to build a truly horizontal company? That's not always the case, right? Analytics is certainly one of them where even though superficially the problems are different, right? I mean, the finance guy and the revenue guy and, I don't know, supply chain guy, they are solving different problems. But if you peel a layer and look at it on the technical level, you will kind of realize that there is way more in common than there are dissimilarities. So ultimately, you are building the same product no matter what. I think where even we realize that we have to have some specialization would be on the GTM side, where once we get a story that, for example, we have like this really large customer who's an oil and gas company.
Yeah.
So we'll kind of like double down on it and make sure that we can capture more interest in that. Once we get like a few use cases around, like say finance, revenue operations, makes it easier to attack those departments going forward. So again, the product is designed very much as a horizontal. On the go-to-market, certainly like when we go into a department which is finance, the story that we are telling is about the analytics problems that the finance department needs to solve. So, but the technology remains the same.
Yeah. And the interesting piece about what you guys are building is that not only are you thinking about these functional areas and how to build this horizontal platform, but this is a new category, right? Mm-hmm. There isn't an existing product that you're replacing. I think Bipul on this podcast said in Rubrik's case, it was a bunch of C products where they knew that there was an alpha opportunity to create something better. But here it's something completely net new. How do you think about telling that story to an enterprise buyer?
Yeah, so it's taken a while. I think the interesting situation about what we are building is, on the one hand, it's a new category. On the other hand, there are a lot of incumbents whom we could resemble, if you don't really look hard.
Yeah.
Right? So what it really comes down to is being able to tell your story in a very, very crisp manner, so that it's very clear where the differentiation lies against any of these. Because I think, if you're trying to just directly attack a lot of incumbents, replacement is always very hard.
Right.
Even though eventually, if you're successful, replacement is really the right thing to do. There's a lot of dollars that's already spent. So in our case, let's just look at like traditional spends in analytics. They go to BI tools, right? So Power BI, Tableau, so on. We are absolutely not in a position to say that, hey, I'm here to replace it.
Yeah.
What we say is, look, we are going to help you train analytics agents that are going to be working with specific personas and ensure that we can get self-service for those. Once we are established and these personas are kind of using our product day in and day out, it begs the question, why do you need these other products that were kind of there, which were dashboarding products and so on. So I think our approach is land side by side, and over a period of time you displace. And this is something that we have seen play out in multiple customers at this point.
And on this point, tell us a little bit about the traction you're seeing really in the context of product market fit. We asked this of a lot of the founders that we talked to. How do you define product market fit? When did you start to realize that you did have that at Wisdom?
So, the two things that I look for, first of all, again, getting some customer proof points. Yeah. That's very important. At this point, I feel there are, we have a handful of Fortune 500 companies, some hyper growth startups as well, who are using our product. In some places, we have kind of displaced some of these traditional tools, which we didn't start off trying to displace, but we have. So that's one, right? So, that gives a lot of confidence that, you're onto something. The second is you're being able to tell the story in an articulated, in a manner that, when you are pitching to new folks, you can sense the difference, right? Between us positioning our product like a year and a half back, and now there is a big difference. And one of the things that we kind of realized was a common, I would say, objection that customers used to have, or prospects used to have, let's say a year and a half back, was, well, I have these tools. All of these tools have promised that they'll add AI to them.
Right.
And I just want to see those out. In all likelihood, once they add AI, they'll all become magical and life is going to be great. The great news is that they all added AI, and in 6 months, people realized that their life changed not at all. So now, at least, it's much easier for us to tell our story.
Yeah, yeah. So if we take an example like a random oil and gas company, just for the folks who are not as familiar with what Wisdom does in a more detailed way, how could they use Wisdom today to change
oil
how
and
they're
gas
acting versus?
Yeah, oil and gas. We have a Fortune 100 oil and gas company as a customer. It is they're using us to do something that I had never imagined was even a problem. It goes as follows. You have a few thousand people in the various oil wells. You can call them mechanics, engineers, what have you. And somebody sees a measurement in one of his, these big consoles that they're looking at. And that measurement says, 3.5. And when the measurement says 3.5 and there is a red light next to it, the question is, what do you do about it? And to figure out what you do about it, you have to do something like, look at wells in a 10-mile radius, look at what was done in the past, look at some manuals, identify if some work was done that might have caused this measurement to kind of like spike up. It's a very involved analysis that needs to be done. That is one of the use cases that we are facilitating, which is completely different from, let's say, somebody working in a finance department, or where it's like, okay, there is a vendor who needs to be paid, and you need to kind of understand, why should this vendor be paid so much? What have we paid so far? Are there some overlapping vendors? Are there some contract terms that mean that we should be able to, kind of not have to pay this particular person? These two problems have nothing in common. And the CEO's problem, like, this marketing campaign didn't do well. Why? These are very, very different problems. Good news is that folks are using our platform to solve all three of those problems. What is common is that ultimately it comes down to, with very high precision, work with data systems, not a single system, but a collection of these systems. Be able to draw inferences across all of them together and make this available in real time. So again, it's the same technical problem being used in vastly different places by different industries.
Yeah, incredible. And I know for a fact you guys are seeing incredible pull from Fortune 100, Fortune 500 companies. There seems to be a clear mandate from the top down that we need to do something in AI, as you were referring to earlier as well. Do you see right now, and it's Q4 2025 timestamp, a lot of enterprises thinking about the buy versus build decision, and how does that factor into when you're pitching these
That's
companies?
a great one. So I think at least in the problem that we are solving, anytime somebody says we have decided to build, I am thrilled about it, because they will fail in 6 months and then they'll become a customer of ours. Because it tells me two things. First of all, they have identified their use case. Right? That's what they're trying to build for. They feel the need. But I also know that building it in-house is really hard. Again, for all the reasons that, data has so much junk. Getting accuracy is really, really hard. Getting the secure access control is really hard. There are lots of hard problems that you need to solve that you don't think of when somebody just says, hey, I learned about this magical GPT-5 API, and I can do a lot with it. Right. From that magical API to build a product, there is a lot of work that needs to happen that folks don't quite realize. But again, the best part is that they have a use case identified. Right. So buy versus build is happening. I think people are also realizing that going from prototypes to production, that's a big hurdle. So another thing that we hear is like, oh yeah, I tried it. It sort of worked, but then we couldn't really make it work, so we shelved it.
Right.
And so all these things are happening.
Yeah, interesting. And it kind of, it's almost by definition what Wisdom does has defensibility built into it because of the data integration, et cetera. But curious, how do you think about defensibility in this world of AI? Things are changing very quickly. You know, we see MCP servers coming up. We see a lot of other things happening on a quarter by quarter basis. How do you just generally think about defensibility?
Yeah. So I think so. I'll rule out the build option.
Yeah.
It's too hard to build.
Yeah.
If I rule those out, I think the way I kind of look at it is 5 years from now, how would people consume data? And my claim is the way that WisdomAI is showing is what I would describe as the natural way to consume data. Then the question becomes, who else can offer this solution, right? And yes, there are other startups as well. It's fine, duke it out. But are there incumbents who just have a natural right to provide the solution? So you mentioned MCP. I think this is a very interesting one. The wisdom around data infrastructure up until now was what Snowflake, Databricks had been perpetuating, which is you use this single aggregation point for all forms of data. Once you do that, then you can do all sorts of magic. With MCP, that is no longer the case. Yes, it makes sense to get some amount of data into these systems so that you can further process them. Yeah. But with MCP, you actually get the ability to connect directly to sources. So that kind of like opens up a brand new way in which you could be accessing data. So I think, as great as Snowflake, Databricks, these companies are, enterprise data has reasons why it may not be pulled in as much as one would have thought earlier. So again, we are kind of like seeing these folks who have been in these like long transformation efforts, realizing that there is a way to kind of get more value quicker.
Yeah.
The second class of competition I think about is the incumbents who provide analytic solutions, Tableaus of the world.
Right.
They suffer from so much legacy that the only way you can get an insight out of Tableau is somebody creates a dashboard for you.
Right.
And so now, like adding a copilot, which is essentially summarize my dashboard, is like picking lipstick to a pig. You still need to create that construct of a dashboard. Only then do you get insights. And our ability to kind of work directly with data kind of fundamentally disintermediates this construct of a dashboard. So I think the incumbents, while they are incumbents, but they don't have the natural right to own what the next generation needs.
And what do you think about on the multi-LLM side, that most enterprises want to use more than one LLM vendor? How does that impact how you think about what Wisdom needs to build or is building?
So that's so we are kind of agnostic to the LLM, right? So we can work with any of them. So that's, in fact, like we already work with many of them. There are customers who sometimes have preference, or for specific tasks, one LLM might have a certain advantage over the other. So it's sort of like baked into our architecture that itself is not a particular consequence for me. It's more like the more the competition, hopefully, the cheaper and faster and better they get, right, which is a big advantage for me.
Yeah, makes sense. And going back to just building Wisdom and getting past product market fit and getting to this massive inflection that you're seeing in the business, talk about just the team building at this point. So you talked a lot about the founding team. How are you starting to think about the people you need to add on? When did you start to make the decision of, okay, we have core engineers, but now we need non-engineers, business, sales, marketing? As a founder, how do you think about that?
Yeah, so I think I would say it's been about 5 to 6 months that I felt we are at a point where we really needed to accelerate. So we have started building out the go-to-market team, hired my head of sales, I think in July timeframe. We're building out that team, marketing, building that out as well. So I would say, it took me I would say 2 years into the company to feel like, okay, this is the time to really step on the gas. Until then it was myself and my co-founder Kapil who were kind of really engaged in all GTM activities, but now That's an area we're invested in. I'd say again, other departments like customer success, actually forward deployed engineering to a limited capacity. Those are like some other areas where we are also investing in.
Yeah.
And of course, engineering continues to be the
Yeah.
biggest area of growth for us. So there's just investing heavily into that as well.
Instinctually, was there a moment when you were like, I know I need to not be doing founder-led sales, or between you and Kapil at that point?
Yeah, I mean, I think it comes down to feeling, there are two things. First of all, like, are we meeting enough people or not, right? So if you're not meeting enough people, then that is a sign that you probably should find ways to meet more people as opposed to hiring more salespeople. Yeah. So we did have like this hair on fire moment, I would say, to middle of this year, where I kind of realized that, okay, we cannot keep up. So that was one. The second one was being able to tell our story, like how confident were we feeling, more like I would just say qualitative sense that you get by speaking to people. So I think both of those sort of like triangulated at the same place.
Okay. And similarly on the forward and deployed engineers, we're seeing a lot of companies, even in our own portfolio with Decagon and Avoca and others who are thinking in this AI moment, that is part of their go-to-market strategy. Just unpack that for us from Wisdom's perspective. Why is that a critical part of how you want to be deploying the platform?
I think, I mean, I have like, I would be very honest, very mixed feelings about this. Yeah. Because I actually want my product to be self-serve and just work immediately. Turns out that is not always the case, right? Enterprise systems just have an enormous amount of variations that you actually need to think through. Right. I would say our forward deployment engineering is still in its like, we are not like taking on 1 year long projects, right? Yeah. We are still talking about like weeks to a month long project to get the product like fully situated. So it's a more, I would say, balanced investment that we have made. But the thing that the reason why you need forward deployed engineers are actually twofold. One is again the complexity of the fact that you have to connect to lots of different sources. That's one kind of complexity. The second is there is a bit of a, what should I call it, black magic in getting AI to work within the organization. Yeah. So if you kind of wanted to tell a customer that, hey, do these 5 things and your system is fully configured, right? Press these 5 buttons and you're ready to go. Right. That's not how a lot of all the companies that you mentioned, including WisdomAI, it's not as easy as press these 5 buttons and it'll work. Right. So in that scenario, there is this, you have to bridge that gap somehow. And most of our customers, look, we are selling to data teams. I mean, these are like the smartest people in the organization. Yeah. So first of all, they want to learn the ropes, absolutely. And so after the first data set where we've kind of done it in a more participatory manner, they absolutely want to be in a place where they can handle the rest of the rollout. But there is this initial period, few weeks, where high touch approach is absolutely required. Yeah. So that's what we're trying to provide.
Amazing. And you mentioned this a little bit as you were talking about the sales role and founder-led sales. As the company is now growing, you've seen this now, this is your 3rd time doing it, so I'm sure you've thought about this. How is your role changing today from what it was even 6 or 12 months ago?
Yeah, I mean, the main, I would say 2 things. One of them is, again, on the storytelling side, it's not enough if I could tell the story well. I have to make sure that this is a story that sort of like tells itself, or other people have the ability to say it. So I think that requires more precision than you kind of do when you're doing founder-led sales. Because as a founder, I can, just by virtue of being a founder, I can sort of work through a lot of different situations. Right. But that simply does not work when you're trying to build a system. So again, there needs to be this repeatability sort of like built in. The second one is when you're doing founder-led sales, you do become very, very pigeonholed into trying to solve the problem of today. And actually need to think about how to build the next few years of the company.
Yeah.
So, getting a little bit more headspace to kind of plan it out. I think that itself is a very big change.
And, given that this is your third time now doing it, I'm sure there were still surprises. Like, what was the biggest surprise so far in the company's journey where even though you'd seen these previous things that you'd founded and taken the distance, that was still a surprise this time around?
I think one very tangible thing would be POCs. And the thing that bothers the hell out of me with Wisdom even now is in a product that is inherently probabilistic, where you cannot tell the customer with complete clarity that here are the 5 steps that you need to do. How do you run a very tight POC? That's a very, very, I would say, complex problem that one needs to solve. I think we are getting better. I think, but ways to go. In fact, we're about to do our free trial launch. I want to bring it down to 1 day of configuration. Let's see if we can do it. I would say the other challenge, again, Bipul was a master salesman. Sales seemed to just happen. I would certainly say that making people excited about your product is different from making people pay for your product. So, and this requires far more sharpness in terms of what is this precise value that you're kind of delivering to them. I think that has been one, I would say, a lot of learnings around that because, even from the very beginning, lots of people were very excited. But it took us a while to get to a point to say that, okay, it's not just exciting, it's something that I want to, in fact, pay you money for.
Right.
So that coming from an exciting idea to something that is precise enough that people would pay for, I think that has taken us some time to figure out, but feel good about it now.
Incredible. I want to ask you a few quick big picture questions. And first is on Wisdom itself. How do you think about it? And you touched a little about the 5-year vision around data and how people will be accessing the enterprise. But in your words, how do you describe where Wisdom is going? What does Wisdom look like in 5 years itself?
Yeah, I mean, look, there is ChatGPT transformed the world. I go there all the time. It's magical. I have it do everything. Decision making should be as magical as ChatGPT is for writing emails or doing my web research. That's our goal. Everybody in the enterprise should be able to use WisdomAI for real-time decision making. I think, first of all, strongly believe that this is how the world should be, and we have built a product that will deliver it.
And one more big picture question. You've been in this industry for 20 years. You've been part of some incredible companies, including now Wisdom, and you're round 3. Where are we in this AI moment? You talked about the magic of ChatGPT. Maybe help position us on where you see this specific innovation and also this industry going.
I mean, I think I would say it is very early innings. If you look at, okay, I sell to businesses. I'll just take the shape of a typical business. If you ask a business, have you been transformed? Have you generated more sales? Are you truly operating with far fewer people or any radical change? The successes are few and far between, right? So, there are some areas let's say customer success where it's indeed possible to transform the experience. But in most of the other places, we are talking about, let's say, 15% productivity increase, right? So let's take engineering an example. Wisdom uses Claude all the time, Cursor all the time. But if I were to look at the overall productivity as measured by, number of pull requests that are kind of being made, that has not had as much of a dramatic change. And the reason is, again, the overall transformation is much more complex than just taking one small portion of it and making it faster. Right. So I think I guess that it's a long way of saying that the promise of AI transforming trillions of dollars worth of business spend, we are so far from it. So I think, it's early innings. It's very exciting. I think what is very exciting is, the level of investment that has gone in. It does mean that all of these tools will continue to get better and better. Businesses I think they have embraced it quite a bit. They all believe that there's going to be transformation. Nobody quite knows how to do it. So I mean, I just think this just means there is opportunity.
Yeah. I know this is a hard question, but do you believe that there might be a Trough, given all this excitement that you just mentioned?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think, look, whenever there is as insane amount of investment going in, there is a bubble. But I think just on the other side, the value that you could be delivering is also tremendous. Typically, the bubble behavior happens before the full value kind of gets delivered. So I'm sure there is going to be a trough, and then we will get to a point where we are all feeling very excited again. So that's inevitable, but that's fine. I mean, I'm a big scheme of things. I am a believer. This is a truly transformative moment.
Incredible. So 2 personal questions to end. One, just at a very personal level, you've had a lot of incredible success as an entrepreneur already. And what drives you now to keep pushing at this level?
I mean, I think there are 2. I mean, so one of them is very simple. If I were not building companies, what else would I be doing? So that's a very basic thing. And I'm a builder at heart. So this is really kind of my ethos. I would be doing this no matter what. The second is, look, I mean, once you have a team, once you have kind of set sail on this big journey, there's also a lot of responsibility, right? I mean, I think you want to do well because of all the people who kind of have believed in you. So I think that's also a big part of it. And thirdly, it is one of those ridiculous moments, it's a kid in a candy store kind of moment in technology that we have today. So for somebody like myself, I could not participate.
Love it. Last question for you. So we ask this of most of our guests. Who has been one person in your life, a professor, a coworker, a manager? You've mentioned a few people already, but who have had a huge impact on your journey to date? Family member, anybody?
I would say, again, growing up, I would say, I mean, mom was a very big influence on me. She was like this math professor, and had this scooter that she rode 40 minutes every day when women working itself was not a thing in India. So that was one big one. I would say in my professional career, actually, I give a lot of credit to Bipul, my mentor at Rubrik. I think accelerated my own personal journey significantly and learned a lot from him. So put it at that.
Incredible. Well, we owe it to Bipul to be introduced in the first place, and it's been incredible to be a partner to you since the beginning of this journey, and excited for what's to come. So thank you for spending time with us today. It was amazing.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.